You know, the funny thing is, on the outside, I was an honest man, straight as an arrow. But then I had to listen to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond to learn to be a crook.
Would you like to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Speakeasy and master connector Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on this planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another spectacular episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond, and today on Thrive Loud, we have the founder and CEO of the Speaker Lab. This gentleman has helped thousands of people build successful and sustainable speaking businesses. He himself is a sought-after speaker, podcaster, author, and accomplished entrepreneur. He has committed his expertise and insight to equip others to share their meaningful message to the masses. Thrive Loud listeners, from Nashville, Tennessee, I bring you Grant Baldwin. Grant, how are you today?
Doing quite well, my friend. How's your day been?
I'm doing better now because you and I are chit-chatting here, and we're going to have a fun conversation. I'm a professional speaker. You're a professional speaker. You work with a lot of speakers, but I want to rewind a little bit because I know a little bit about you, but our listeners need to be brought up to speed. If you could, Grant, I don't want to go all the way back to the womb, but can you kind of share how this line of work, and specifically the work you're doing with the Speaker Lab, became your gig?
Yeah, so we'll go back in time a little bit here. So in high school, I was really involved in my local church, and my youth pastor had a really big impact in my life, and really resonated with me. I was like, I want to do that. Like, that seems like a really cool gig, and I kind of felt like if I could make the kind of difference in other people's lives that he had made in my life, that just felt incredibly fulfilling and rewarding. And so that's kind of the path I was on. I went to Bible college. I was a youth pastor for a little while at a different church, and parts of it I liked, parts of it I didn't like. But one of the things I really enjoyed, one of the things I felt like I was decent at, was speaking. And speaking was one of the things I was doing on a weekly basis. Speaking to students, occasionally I'd speak on the weekend in big church, and just really enjoyed it. And so ultimately decided, like, hey, I want to be a speaker. But at the time, I wasn't entirely sure what that meant or what that looked like. And this was 17, 18 years ago. There weren't really any books or trainings or coaches or mentors or podcasts or anything about the subject or topic of speaking. And so I found myself emailing other speakers, harassing them, kind of pick your brain, that sort of thing, and learned a couple things, booked a couple gigs, and did that for the next several years, where eventually I got to the point where I was doing about 60, 70 paid speaking gigs a year, and absolutely loved it. It was just traveling all over and speaking at some awesome gigs, and just having a blast. And so at the time, though, I had a lot of people who were also asking me like those same questions. They're like, hey, I want to be a speaker. How do I do that? And things like, how do you find gigs, and what do you speak about, and who hires speakers, and how much do you charge? And Lou, as you know, like this speaking world can be like this mysterious black box at times. And so about 6-7 years ago is when we started the Speaker Lab, which is a coaching and training company for speakers, teaching primarily the business of speaking. How do you actually find and book gigs, and trying to demystify this world? And so I've been in the speaking industry for most of my career, and it's a good place to be, as you well know.
Well, and it's a very good point. You made an interesting part about the uniqueness of the speaking business. One of my fellow speaking colleagues one time put it very aptly and said, the speaking business is kind of weird because it is one of the strangest offerings out there. Not only are professional speakers products on a shelf, and I'm using that term very carefully, how they are marketed, who makes the selection to hire them, and from the biggest stages in the world to the smallest workshops or whatever it might be, the range of making money as a speaker, making a living as a speaker, is absolutely just as a wide swath of so much stuff.
Yep.
I would love if you could kind of help people understand part of how you kind of decipher and navigate through the world of the speaking business to help people navigate through the speaking business. I think that would be cool.
Yeah. So one of the things, as you well know, Lou, is it's not a one size fits all. There's a lot of different ways that speaking can look in different people's businesses. So we both know people who speak 100, 150, 200 times a year, and speaking is all that they do. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who speak 5 or 10 times a year, and they use it in kind of addition to coaching, training, consulting, having books, doing something else, and both work. And so there's a lot of different ways that speaking can look. And so ultimately, it really kind of depends on what someone is looking to accomplish in their own own business and how speaking fits in and makes sense for them. So for me to, if we go back several years when I was speaking full time, doing again 60, 70 gigs, that's all I want to do. I wasn't trying to do any coaching or consulting or anything else. And like all I wanted to do was to book gigs. That was my head down focus, day in and day out, book gigs. Now fast forward to today, I still do some speaking, but not nearly as much as I used to do. And much more of my focus and attention is on the speaker lab and what we do to help work with other speakers. So there's a lot of versatility to speaking, and it can also evolve and change over time depending on what it is that you're trying to do, what it is that you want to accomplish within your business.
What was the switch, the thing, the light bulb that went off that made you shift from loving what you were doing and going 60, 70 times a year to speak to creating this coaching consulting business to help others do it? Was it too much travel? Was it you had a gift and a message to share? Help our listeners understand what made you transform to say, this is something that I know the world is missing and I'm going to fill that void.
Yeah, I think there were a couple things that happened. One was, Lou, as you know, like being on the road can be tiring. It can be a little draining at times. And, there's certainly fun parts of it. You and I have probably seen more of the country than most people have in a lifetime. And so there's like absolutely some really cool parts of it. But I remember talking with a speaker early on in my own career, and he said, speaking is a high-paying manual labor job in that you get paid really, really well to stand on stage and run your mouth. But the nature of speaking is you got to get on a plane, you got to leave your family, you got to go somewhere. And so that part of it like got a little bit tiring at times. Like I just want to be home. I just want to, sleep, wake up in my own bed and not wonder what time zone I'm in and what I'm trying to do that day. So that was certainly part of it. But also I think I got to a point where, at least in the market and the niche that I was in, the pond that I was in, I'd done a lot of the major events, done a lot of the major keynotes. And so I had a friend who gave me a really good piece of advice. He said, you want to regularly find things where the challenge exceeds the skill set. Meaning whenever you first start speaking, you feel like you're way over your head. You could stand in front of a 100-person audience and you just feel completely traumatized and terrified because the challenge exceeds the skill set. And what happens is over time it flips and the skill set exceeds the challenge. Meaning, Lou, you and I might be able to stand in front of 500 people today and deliver a great presentation, a great keynote, but be on autopilot and be bored. And so he said, you regularly have to find things where you're kind of outside of your comfort zone. And so those two things of just being on the road a lot and kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily being bored with it, but kind of looking for new challenges, new mountains to climb. That was stuff that kind of got my wheels spinning and going like, okay, if I had a business around this, what would that look like? Because so much of what I was doing again was, it was a job, it was a career. And like, again, it was a really fun job, but it was a job. It's kind of like a surgeon, a surgeon makes really good money, but they have to show up and perform surgery. You don't have a business, you have a really cool job. And so speaking was a bit of that for me at the time. And I had, again, a lot of people were asking me about the business of speaking. And at the time I didn't see a lot of people who were teaching on the business of speaking. There's a lot of people who taught on how to create and deliver a great talk and put that together and slides and stories and presentation skills. And those things are absolutely important. But at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, but how do you find a gig? And what do you charge? And how does that side of the business work? And again, at the time, there was not a lot of people who were teaching or coaching or training on that. And so we started doing a little bit around that. And then it started to really pick up traction. I found that I felt like we were able to help speakers who were where I was when I got started. Yeah. I felt like when I got started, I had the potential, but I needed the plan. I had the potential, but I needed the plan. Meaning I was a decent speaker. I wasn't the best. I wasn't the worst, but there was something there. Someone just tell me what to do. Like, how do you find these gigs and who do you reach out to and who do you talk to and what do you say to them? What do you speak about? Like someone just demystify this for, I can do it. I'll put in the work, but I just need to know, like, where's the roadmap? Where's the plan here? And there just wasn't any. And so I think that when we've started like trying to solidify that, codify that, and teach other speakers, here's what you need to be doing, and then see the light bulbs come on for them. It's kind of like you push that first domino, and for a speaker who books their first gig or their 10th gig, and then they're just like, oh, okay, I got it. It clicks, this light bulb, eureka moment, when they feel like they can do this. That's been incredibly, incredibly fulfilling. So yeah, that's the core of how we spend our energy and effort today with speakers.
So I wanted to hit this one because this is going to be an interesting perspective specifically from the work that you do. Like everyone in every industry, when 2018 and 19 was coming, even the very beginning of 2020, you're a professional speaker or you're helping to train a lot of speakers, it's busy and the business is normal. Then the pandemic hits and very much like the supply chain issues that the whole world was facing when, like, this very fast-moving train stops and it just is like a whole mess of cars colliding into each other and then trying to get restarted again. The speaking industry has been an interesting one. One, because in an interim gap, nobody was going in person into audiences. Two, the medium you and I are recording this in right now became something that people were trying to at least bridge a gap. And now, as we've sort of gotten back into normal flows, the business has obviously changed. Help our listeners understand, at least from even helping people who have now come into the world, because one of the things that I do know happened, having hosted this podcast show, is that more and more people, a light bulb went off and said, I want to be a professional speaker. I want to figure out what to do when the pandemic hit. Very good for somebody like yourself. Tell me how both you've seen the adaptation in the industry and how you've had to adapt the Speaker Lab to help people in this world that we're in today of speaking.
Yeah. So if we go back to January, February, March 2020, and COVID comes along, like everything kind of comes to a screeching halt, and everyone's like, now what? And I've kind of felt the same thing. Our whole business is on teaching and training speakers, and all of a sudden, like there's no events that are happening anywhere. So it's kind of a bit of a panic for speakers and for us. And so I think fast forwarding here, this is kind of what we thought might play out, but I think this is going to sound a little weird, but I think that COVID, the pandemic, has been one of the best possible things to happen to the speaking industry. And here's why. Prior to the pandemic, virtual speaking, as you know, wasn't really a thing. It wasn't something that event planners were really taking seriously. Speakers weren't taking seriously. You kind of dabbling it here or there, but it just wasn't a big deal. Well, pandemic comes along, and all of a sudden, virtual is the only game in town. It's the only option. Everything in person stops, as we all remember. But what we've seen happen is that as we kind of come out of the pandemic more and more, that live events have come back more and more. They're not coming back in replacement of virtual events, but they're coming back in addition to virtual events. And so in many ways, there's greater supply than there was previously, because there's going to be more in-person events than there were previously. But also people who during the pandemic who historically had not done a in-person event, all of a sudden are leaning into virtual events. And they're looking for good speakers. Now, they may have different budgets, and it may look differently, but they're going, I still want a good speaker for my audience, or team meeting, or whatever it may be. And so what we've seen today, fast forward to this point in early 2023 when we're recording, is there's a significant amount of in-person events that are available, also a significant amount of virtual events. It's also created a lot of opportunities for hybrid events, where maybe you are going to speak in person, but there's also going to be telecast virtually, which is happening more and more. Which is also that happened a lot pre-pandemic as well. But the other thing that we're seeing is speakers who are able really to combine these and say, okay, maybe I'm going to come in and I'm going to speak in person to your group, to your team, to your audience, and then maybe for the next 6 months we're going to do a once-a-month Zoom to help with some of the implementation or some of the brainstorming about something that I talked about. And so it's created opportunities for speakers to do more than just, hey, I fly in, I speak, I leave, and that's the end of the transaction. But how can I continue to go deeper with this audience or with this client, work more with them based on whatever it is that we talked about? And so it increases the speaking fees that speakers are able to charge, increases some of the opportunities that they may have. May mean that they need to work with fewer clients because they can go deeper with any individual client. So again, I think it's just the pandemic has created a lot of different opportunities for speakers to create some versatile different options of how they can deliver a message, how they can serve a client that didn't previously exist prior to the pandemic.
I'm going to go here, and this might be one. We'll call this a hot take. We'll call this loose take, but it's an interesting one. I want to get your take on this, and that is the speaking space is crowded. You can go search the term speaker in LinkedIn on their profile pieces, and you will not believe how many people have that actual word in their description, whether they're a professional speaker or they just happen to be a TEDx speaker or they're a CEO that every now and then shows up and speaks. And we've also had a tremendous change in how people are presenting virtually, in person, where they need to be. Okay, one, your take is it too crowded? And is there so much demand and so many opportunities out there? The key thing is finding your right lane, your right niche, and kind of like nailing it. Get your take on this. I'm actually really curious to hear, Grant, what you have to say on this.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a fair question because there's a lot of speakers. I remember speaking at a conference a couple of years ago, and I met a guy before I spoke. Lou, as you know, like before you speak, you're just another person that is at an event, right? And people are like, "What are you? And who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?" You know, but then after you speak, it's like, "Oh, you were that guy. You were the dude, right?" And so before I spoke, met someone just at, I don't know, in the hall or something. They're like, "What do you do?" And I said, I'm a speaker. And they're like, "Oh, me too. I'm a speaker." I was like, "Oh, cool." You know, and so didn't really think anything of it. And so I saw them the next day, and they came up to me and they're like, "Hey, I checked out your website. Like, you're actually a speaker. Like, that's really cool, you know?" And to your point there, it's one of those things where someone speaks once and all of a sudden, you know, they put it on their bio or wherever, like, I'm a speaker. And so, you know, Lou, you and I have been in the industry for a while, so we know people who, you know, are speakers, and we know people who are like, yeah, kind of speakers. And so understand that, and that, you know, in this day and age, and this isn't just true today, this has been the case for decades and decades, longer than either of us have been around. Like, speaking, we humans ascribe a certain level of prestige and recognition to it. And so a lot of people say, "Hey, I want to position myself as a speaker, as an expert, as an authority." And as far as your question going, like, is it too crowded? You know, the great thing about speaking is there's not one speaker who can speak to everybody. No matter how great we are, no speaker is doing 365 dates a year, nor would you even want to. And even if you did do that, there's thousands of events that happen on a daily basis all over the world. So even as you add speakers in, it's a really big pie, and you don't need a massive slice of that, because one person can only do so much. I remember working with a speaker a couple years ago, and they were a veterinarian, and so they came to us. They went through one of our programs, and they said, "Hey, I really want to get into speaking." They kind of went through some stuff. They came back to me like a month or two later, and they're like, "I just booked my first gig for $5,000. I was like, "Awesome, that's great. Tell me about the gig. Where is it?" They lived in Connecticut, and they were invited to speak at this gig in Vegas for a pet sitting conference. Pet sitting conference. And so if you would have asked, if they came to me and said, "Hey, I'm a veterinarian. I really want to get into the pet sitting space. What are the opportunities that exist?" I'd be like, "I don't think there are. Like, that doesn't sound like a thing." So if she came to me and said, "Hey, the idea of getting paid $5,000 to speak at a pet sitting conference, is that a thing?" I don't think so, but maybe. And so there's all these types of just like nuances and niches, and niches within niches that provide opportunities for speakers. So in some cases, like, yeah, there's a lot of speakers that exist in the world, but at the same time, there's a lot of opportunities to speak. So I think the pool's big enough for everybody. Come on in, the water's warm.
I was waiting for that line. I'm like, someone's diving into some pool here. The speaker lab. Let's give like a glimpse-sized view of what it's like for the experience and for who it is for, right? Because obviously there's lots of speakers out there, and there's certain components. Help me understand and help the listeners understand a little bit more of the speaking lab, what it's about, and who benefits.
Yeah, so we work with speakers at all different levels. So a lot of the speakers we work with are early on in their speaking career. They're trying to figure out, maybe I've booked some gigs before, maybe I've been paid a time or two. But a lot of times, especially early on, it's gigs that are like things that fell in my lap. It was word of mouth, it was referral, it was doing a favor for a friend. And like, that's great, but like, that's not a business. And so they're going like, but how do I do this more? And how do I charge more? And how does this world work? So a lot of people have kind of stumbled into speaking, but how do you, there's a difference between kind of like kicking the tires of speaking and doing it from time to time. Like, no, this is like a key part of my business, or this is my business, and treating it as such. And so, if you're someone who's going, I've done some speaking before, I'd like to do more of it, I'd like to get paid more consistently, I'd like to charge higher fees. Those are a lot of the speakers that we work with, especially early on. Also work with speakers who are going like, okay, I'm doing this consistently, I'm earning six figures from speaking. Now I'm starting to run into challenges like figuring out hiring and operations and logistics and systems and finances and just things that like you didn't think about whenever you're smaller. Now it's like, hey, I'm making real money, and I want to go deeper with clients, but I also need to figure out kind of the back end of like what I'm doing here, and not trying to duct tape everything together all the time. And so trying to figure out systems, processes, structure, that sort of thing. And so yeah, we work with speakers on both ends of the spectrum, depending on really what people are looking for.
Graham, what do you like most in the world that you're in? Obviously, you have connectivity. Speakers are very interesting people. We've had a lot of them on this program, and I'm always fascinated and energized, and my level of curiosity is peaked. So you're dealing with really interesting people through the speaker lab. You're also providing them value on how they can actually monetize, map out a plan, make a career out of it. And obviously your own development of the Speaker Lab and all the people in it and your systems and all that stuff. Just tell me, if you have a lot of hats to wear, what's the thing that gets you the most happy each day as it relates to the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think two things. Internally and externally. Internally, I love our team. I love the work that we're doing. One of my personal challenges, and I tell our team this regularly, is I want the Speaker Lab to be the best place that you ever work. Finding and retaining good talent is difficult, and so I always tell people I want to make it really, really difficult for you to leave. Not in a manipulative way, but just say I don't want someone to. I'll give you an example. Someone messaged me the other day, and they said, "This is the first job that I've ever had where I'm not thinking about my next job." And I was like, perfect. Like that's what we want, is the people who are not like the grass is greener over there. They want, no, the grass is awesome here. And so that's a fun challenge that keeps me engaged. I love what we do with our team. We've got about 35 people on our team, completely virtual company. So how do you create a virtual company with people that are like really bought into what we're doing when we're not in an office every day? That's a fun challenge. And so really enjoy that. From an external standpoint, the students that we work with, the students and clients that we support, especially who are booking those first couple gigs, and again, like we talked about that domino, where they're just like, oh dang, like I can do this. This always seemed like this mysterious thing that I can never do or get into or accomplish, and now I see a path, and it's like a level of confidence that comes over them. Like, no, I can do this. Like, it's going to take a lot of work, and we're not shy about that. Like, we're really, really clear of we're going to teach you what to do, but make no mistake, like this still requires work. This is not some silver bullet and like hey, pop this pill and all of a sudden thousands of dollars will magically come pouring out at you as a speaker. It just doesn't work like that. Like you can do this, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of commitment. So if you're in, like we're in with you, we want to take that ride with you. But again, this is still going to require a lot of work. It's kind of like it's like losing weight. What do you need to do to lose weight? You need to do two things. Pay attention to what you eat, and you need to exercise. It's simple, but it's not easy. Right? It still requires work, still requires discipline, and the same thing is true with speaking. So the internal, the external things, those things they keep me really engaged, and it's a lot of fun.
You've been thriving throughout your career. You've got the Speaker Lab kicking on all cylinders, which is awesome, which is why you're here on the show and why you thrive loud. But we always have those days or those moments when we're not quite kicking on all cylinders and we're a little off our game. Grant Baldwin, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or maybe which individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
I'm a very optimistic guy. I'm also a very even-keeled guy. The highs aren't too high, the lows aren't too low. Everything's pretty. You see what you get. And so if there are days where things are just not going well, and it could be any number of things. Like there are plenty of crises that happen in business from time to time. It's just like one having a long-term perspective of today may suck, today may be frustrating, this thing may have happened. Like in the scheme of things, this will pass, and it's not going to be that big a deal. I also like one thing that's been really valuable is staying connected with other entrepreneurs, other business owners, other speakers, just comparing notes and talking. And sometimes it's like to share a win. Being an entrepreneur, being a speaker can be very lonely, be very isolating. And so surrounding yourself sometimes with people that you just like give a high five to, like, hey, something's going really well, and I just want to celebrate it. And I want you to celebrate what's happening in your business. I want to celebrate that with you. And then other times, like, hey, here's something that happened, and like this has got me really discouraged, stressed, worried, anxious, whatever it may be. So just to kind of talk that out. Maybe after talking that out, you realize like it's actually not that big a deal in the scheme of things. So those type of people. Also have a coach that I work with, that I meet with on a regular basis, who's about 20 years older than me, has just done well and is personally, professionally. It's something that I just go to for advice and wisdom, and just like, hey, talk me through this. What should I do here? Here's kind of what I'm thinking. Am I missing something? What are my blind spots? And so being like surrounding yourself with people who are along the journey with you, or a step or two ahead of you in the journey, has also been really valuable for me.
Spectacular. Before we go down to the admin part of the show here, I do want to go through that so we can do this. I want to address the audience that are not speakers but are thinking about speakers. And I think one of the questions I have before we do our little plug section here, so you can tell everybody about the Speaker Lab, is what message do you want to say to those people who are considering jumping into professional speaking?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about speaking is, again, there's people that do this full time. It's the core part of what it is that they do, but that's not always going to be the case. For some people who are watching or listening, they're like, I got a really good gig. Either I work for a company or I do my own thing, and I'm interested in speaking, but I'm not really sure how it fits. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like we talked about at the beginning, there are people that do 100 gigs a year and people that do 5 gigs a year, and they both work. They both can be effective. One of the things that we've seen that's worked really well is speaking can be really, really good for networking. It can be good for lead generation. It can be good for building credibility, for respect in a certain industry. It can also be good, like we talked about earlier, it can be good for travel. There's a lot of benefits for speaking that may or may not always show up on a check. So again, if you're someone who's just like, I'm kind of intrigued by speaking, like, great, we'd love to talk to you. There's different resources we'll mention in a second, things that we can do to help you or support you. But yeah, whether you want to speak full time or you just want to kick the tires of speaking, there's always an opportunity for you.
All right, let's do that. Let's hit the admin part of the show. Share with the listeners all the places people can find you, websites, URLs, social handles. We will put it all in the show notes, but always gets more engagement when they hear it from you.
Yeah, everything we do is over at thespeakerlab.com, thespeakerlab.com. If you listen to this podcast, you probably listen to other podcasts. We got a podcast by the same name, the Speaker Lab Podcast. Got over 400 episodes of it. Lou, we're getting ready to record an episode with you. So everyone's going to want to come check that one out as well. We got a book called The Successful Speaker, 5 Steps for Booking Gigs, Getting Paid, Building Your Platform. Definitely check that out. So we walk through a 5-step framework. It makes the acronym SPEAK, S-P-E-A-K, of exactly what do you do when you're like, I have no idea who to speak to. What do I speak about? How does this mysterious world work? We're going to walk through that in detail, exactly what to do. But yeah, check out the podcast, check out the book, and if there's anything we can do to help you support you, let us know.
I love professionals who know how to do the plug section really well. I have to give you a golfer's clap there. That was spectacular. Went right through it and plugged me at the same time, which is awesome, which we will definitely do and put in the show notes here. All right, Grant, are you ready, even though you've been born ready, to go down Fun Street here on Thrive Loud?
Giddy up. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. I know you haven't shared this with me yet, so it's going to hit me in whatever direction it is. Is there a movie of yours that's an all-time one that you love to rewatch or always comes back to you, or just that one that sticks out as like, that's my favorite movie?
Yeah, one that comes to mind is one I rewatched recently. So my wife and I, we were on a trip with our oldest daughter. We do one-on-one trips with each of our kids on an annual basis. We were on a trip. We went skiing. We got back from the slopes, and we're sitting around. We're like, let's watch something. We're kind of going through the archives, figuring out something. Like, here's what we need to watch. We need to watch Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans is such a good movie, and we watched that with her, and she was like, that was a really good movie. It's funny. It's got a great message to it. So yeah, Remember the Titans is
and it's got a pretty heartbreak moment in there too. I want to be clear.
Yeah, very much so.
It's very good. It's also anytime you get Denzel in anything, you can't go wrong. I guess that's always true. All right, it's a good one. We're going to do the speed round here. I'm going to ask you something. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. These are things that lift you up, motivate you, make you feel good. They basically make you thrive. And since you're the one giving the answers, you're going to nail it. So it's all good. There's no wrong answers. Unless I say there's wrong, and that's just totally crazy. But that's not true. Okay. Here we go. Of late, Grant, is there a song that you've been listening to or maybe one that pumps you up?
Candidly, I don't listen to a ton of music. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
So what are you listening to of days that isn't Thrive Loud and isn't obviously your show? What are some podcasts that you're listening to?
Yeah, I listen to there's an Andy Stanley leadership podcast. Listen to a podcast called My First Million. Listen to a podcast called All the Hacks. Some Tim Ferriss stuff, some Rogan stuff. There's probably a list of them I could pull up.
No, that's good. I like this is a good one. We could if you want to send me the list, and we could drop it in the notes and say, here are the podcast shows. But we're only going to promote yours and mine. So
perfect. Go to those.
Okay. A favorite food that is not a dessert.
Let's go steak. Steak and potatoes. Old Faithful.
Favorite dessert.
I got a bad sweet tooth. So anything ice cream, cake, fruity, chocolately.
Covers it all.
I'll take it all.
Take it all.
All the things. I'm in.
Somebody once asked that question. I said, favorite dessert? They go, yes, please. There you go. You just got it all.
Exactly.
An activity you wish you did more of?
I'll tell you an activity I do a lot of that I really enjoy. I'm into pickleball right now. You're playing pickleball?
I literally played it yesterday. I love the game. It's great.
Man, I'm playing 3-4 days a week right now.
Nice.
It is so much fun. Everybody assumes like it's for people twice our age. It is a blast. As you know, man, it is a hard workout. You get a ton of sweat in. It's great cardio, great community building with people. It's a lot. I love me some pickleball.
What I do recommend is you do pickleball on a real serious competitiveness with the group and guys, and then if you want to have some fun, you do drickleball, which is basically you drink a little bit before you play pickleball, and then we call it drunk pickleball, and then you have no idea where the ball's going. No, I
got a buddy who hosts a night called Dinks and Drinks.
Oh, very nice.
Dinking, for those that aren't familiar, is a pickleball term.
Yes, and when we say you can't go in the kitchen, that is not a reference that you can't eat anything, just to be clear. Just can't put your foot in there. An activity you wish you did less of?
Probably looking at my phone. Like a lot of people. So one thing I do is actually I track on a daily basis how much time I spend on my phone. And so
where are you at on average? Where is Grant at his what's the line that's too much and that's okay?
I'm trying to stay below 3 hours a day, which even that just sounds stupid just saying out loud. So most days I can stay below that. It kind of depends on the day and what I'm doing. Weekends it peaks up a little bit. But one thing we haven't talked about is I love being a speaker, I love being an entrepreneur. The things that really matter to me, married to my high school sweetheart. We've been married almost 21 years, together 26 years. We got 3 beautiful daughters. They're 16, 14, 12. So it's me and a house full of women. And I absolutely love it. It's the best. And so love being a speaker, love being an entrepreneur, but the most important roles are being a good husband, being a good father. It's hard to do that when you're just staring at a phone.
I like it. We did an activity you wish you did more of. We did an activity you wish you did less of. I want to know, is there an activity other than pickleball, an activity recently that you've tried that you'd recommend for others to do the same?
I put pickleball on that list. Here's something I'm trying right now that is just hard and kind of kicking my butt, is I'm working on getting my pilot's license. I have no practical need for it. We like to travel, but it's easier just to hop on a Southwest plane. I've always just thought it'd be kind of cool to get my pilot's license. So been working on that. Even if you're someone who's like, I have no desire to do that, go take a discovery flight sometime. And it's a ton of fun, and it's just a different perspective being up there with all the controls and switches. And I've been able to solo a couple times at this point now, and probably another month or so away from getting my pilot's license. So it's a lot of work, but it's pretty fun as well.
I like that. And what size plane? What are you flying when you fly?
Yeah, just a small little Cessna, a little 4-seater, so nothing fancy. It doesn't go very fast, but you're when you're up in the air by yourself and you're like, I got to figure out how to get this back on the ground. Nobody's up there to help you out. It's quite the feeling.
Awesome. If I could snap my fingers and Grant Baldwin can be anywhere in the world, where is he?
I'm wherever my girls are. My wife, my daughters, I want to be with them. I love doing life with them. We love to travel. We love adventures. In fact, last night we were sitting around talking about different trips that we want to take this year. We already got several trips booked out. We're like, yeah, what about this one? What about this one? And the girls were like, hang on, we already got a bunch. It's like, yeah, but let's do another one. Come on, So we love going on trips, love having experiences with them. They're a lot of fun.
Love it. Grant Baldwin, the Speaker Lab. Everybody check out the notes, the links, and he's helping help you get your message out there. Thanks so much for coming on the program, my friend.
Lou, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it, buddy.
You got it. To all the listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving on, and upward, and remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com. And follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.